A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another webinar in the continuing series of educational webinars brought to you by the Directors Club of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Today's webinar is entitled Contact Centre Outsourcing Grand Designs, and this is part one of a series, and in this particular part we are focusing on cloud-based infrastructure. Now, just by means of introduction, my name is John Snow. I'm currently the chair of the Directors Club, and we're an organisation, a membership organisation for customer-focused professionals, founded in 2010, and we currently have 1,700 UK members, and they are in the main senior-level executives, directors and heads in the area of customer service, experience, customer engagement, insight, customer operations, but also in some of the emerging areas around mobile, social, web, and self-service. But in terms of the remit of the organisation, we're actually it's all very open, and the membership is open to all senior executives that have a stakeholding in customer experience at any point along the customer journey. Now, if you wish to find out more about the Directors Club activities, you can go to our website, which is dcgbni.co.uk, or you can follow us on Twitter, which is dcgbni on Twitter, and the Twitter feed is particularly useful as it provides a running feed of all the latest news, research, and feature articles in the customer arena. So it's well worth following us on Twitter. Now, today I'm joined by two experts in the area of outsourced contact centres and the cloud. First, we've got Neil Titcombe, who's the country manager for UK and Ireland at Interactive Intelligence. A little bit of biog there with regard to Neil, and in particular, Neil specialises in the outsourced vertical and working with outsourcers with regard to the design of their technology infrastructure. Now, he's also joined by Dennis Cambridge, who's the ICT manager at VoxPro. Now, if you're not familiar with VoxPro, VoxPro is a multilingual BPO, business process outsourcing provider, delivering customer contact solutions on behalf of 300 organisations and companies, ranging from local enterprises to multinational corporations, and includes some of the biggest blue chip companies. So thank you very much to both Neil and Dennis for joining us today, and I'll be handing over to them in the not too distant future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you can take part today in our webinar through our Q&A function. Now, throughout the presentations, so you don't have to wait till the end, throughout the presentations today, you can click on the question mark icon, which is on your floating toolbar. I think that starts off by being shown on the right-hand side of your screen. You can move it about if you wish. And you click on that question mark and you get the Q&A window. In the small window within that panel, you put in your question. Now, it can be as complex or as simple as you like, so feel free to ask as many questions as you like. You're not restricted to any particular number. So put in your question up to 256 characters and press the send button, and that will come through to us. We'll try and address as many of your questions as we can during the Q&A session, which will be at the end of today's presentations. If in fact we don't have time to answer all the questions, don't worry, your question won't be wasted, and our presenters will respond to you directly by email post the event. So, our topic for today: contact centre outsourcing grand designs, cloud-based infrastructure. Now, the reason that we've picked this particular topic to start our series on contact centre grand designs is it's having a phenomenal impact on the business model and operating model of the outsourcing providers in the current industry. And in today's challenging climate, a contact centre outsourcer's operational model must be flexible in terms of business offering and geographic location. It must be scalable in terms of both in short notice and also in terms of extremes, both scaling up and down to react to those business wins and losses. And also the model must be controllable with regards to cost and revenue alignment. Now, key characteristics of the flexible, scalable, controllable outsourcing business model include low fixed overheads, so avoiding those sort of capex-heavy data centers and the associated management and support of them, but also minimum commitments to revenue-linked resources, which include people, real estate, and the technology infrastructure. And today we're going to be looking at that latter piece, that technology infrastructure. And in particular, we're going to be looking at how contact center solutions delivered over the cloud or through the cloud can offer the low overheads, the geographic flexibility, and the revenue-aligned cost control, which we see as vital to the outsourcing industry going forward. So, to kick off our formal presentations for today, I'm going to hand you over to, first of all, to Neil Titcombe, and then he will later on introduce his colleague Dennis Cambridge from Voxpro. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Neil and make sure everything's okay technology-wise. Neil, can you hear me?
I can indeed, John. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Well, Neil, what I'm just going to do before you kick off is to first of all change the slide deck to your slide deck, and then hand you the presenter controls, which I'm doing now, and away you go. So I'll join you in about 40 minutes' time for the Q&A session, but over to you, Neil.
Great. Thank you, John, for a lovely, eloquent introduction, as always. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar today. We hope this will be an exciting session and a great insight into both the outsource sector and how cloud-based technologies in the contact center space is assisting and helping them in a number of different ways. I'd like to run through a number of points with you today. If I can just work out how to move these slides on. There we go. So in terms of what we're going to cover, I'll just do a brief introduction in terms of us as a business. Look at some market statistics and information in terms of how hosted technologies are changing and attitudes to hosted technology is changing. And then, in keeping with the key topic today, how they are benefiting the outsource market specifically. And then we'll hand over to Dennis to actually give us some first-hand experience of how Voxpro Communications have indeed implemented hosted technology in their contact center, and learn from some of the experiences that Voxpro and Dennis personally have seen since they're doing that around about this time last year. So just to start off, interactive intelligence, why are we qualified indeed to discuss and talk on this subject? Well, we've been delivering contact center technology now for almost 20 years. We have a product called Customer Interaction Center, which is an all-encompassing suite of applications providing a multitude of different types of contact center technology, from the core ACD you'd expect to find in almost every call center, through to quite sophisticated business process management tools, speech analytic tools, outbound dialing technologies, call recording, and many other different solutions. What's quite unique, though, to our offering is that we can offer our solutions in both a premise and indeed a hosted model. The key difference to many of our competitors being that it's the same underlying technology in either delivery model, should you choose to indeed buy it on a license basis and install that on equipment provided by yourselves, versus the hosted offering, where we will take care of the management and put that same technology into one of our 7 data centers around the world to provide on an operating model. And of course, we're going to talk much more about that through this presentation. In terms of our offering, indeed our global reach, then as I just mentioned, we have 7 data centers around the world, serving our customers in now over 90 countries. This is all centrally managed through a NOC that's based in our corporate headquarters in Indianapolis, and then we support all of that with technical assistance through different countries around the world to indeed provide support to our customers wherever they may be, and they are indeed all over the world. Looking at just quickly some of our existing customers, specifically in the hosted space, and you can see from this logo slide here, we have a multitude of different business verticals that use our technology. By definition of the width of our products from a technology point of view, then we are appealing to almost any business that indeed has a customer focus or customer targeted department. So obviously outsourcers are key and avid users of our technology and make up more than a third of our customer base. But equally we have customers in the insurance sectors, finance sectors, utility, insurance amongst others, some of which you can see on this slide. Closer to home, many of those customers are global clients. You can see here we have some brands that might be more familiar to you from a local audience, from those of you in the UK and Ireland particularly. Some brands quite obvious. Wonga is an interesting case in point. They indeed use our hosted technology in the UK to service their payday loan business, and that's being expanded in different regions around the world as they grow quite aggressively. We also have clients like Philips. That's a medical element within the Philips organization that uses our hosted technology to provide customer technical support to hospitals all over the world. And then of course we have VoxPro, which, as I say, we'll hear from Dennis later on, who are one of our key outsourced clients using our hosted telephony. And as I say, we'll hear much more from Dennis in a while in terms of how they've implemented the solutions quite specifically. Interactive Intelligence are known in the marketplace as innovative. We're very proud of our heritage in terms of how we've pioneered many first-to-market achievements in terms of the contact center marketplace. And as you can see from this quite busy slide, but it does depict quite clearly how we've been developing cloud-based communications for more than 10 years now. In the early 2000s, we first delivered a hosted-based product. Before, in fact, indeed, we even provided an IP-based premise product in 2003. Our technology is all our own. We're very proud of that. It's something we've developed internally. We have an army of developers today continually developing the product and coming up with new innovative ways to indeed deliver contact center technology and associated technologies. We started the product quite simply in terms of what it was capable of, but as you can see from this slide, I've periodically added new technology as time's gone on, most recently being highlighted by a mobile application called Interaction Mobilizer that we launched just early this year, enabling contact centers to connect more seamlessly with their customers who are using smartphones, and the evolution and almost obsession that we have now with mobile apps. So in terms of our sort of value proposition, how we position ourselves, then trust is key, and I'll talk more a bit later about the motivation and the driver behind moving from what many of you still might have today as a traditional, what we call premise-based technology, versus actually outsourcing it to a hosted provider like ourselves. And trust in the knowledge that that provider can indeed deliver on their promises in a reliable and risk-free way is very, very important. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that from a functionality point of view, that is still critical. We need to be providing leading-edge technology just the same way as we have on premises, in the same way as we do in the cloud. And then, very importantly, providing you that flexibility. We're going to hear a lot more about that from Dennis, but equally from ourselves in terms of how hosted technology really can change things quite considerably without any detriment to the feature set, but give you, the client, much more flexibility in terms of how you both grow and shrink the system where appropriately if you are an outsourcer, but also from an ongoing IT and management infrastructure point of view. So cloud as a buzzword can get misconstrued. It can mean many things to many people, and there's a little definition here in terms of private cloud versus hybrid cloud versus public cloud. What we're mainly focusing on today is indeed a public cloud offering, in the sense that it's a service provided by, in this case, Interactive Intelligence in our data centers, and you as an end client would contract with us to use that service. Private cloud, for clarification, is more where clients would want to effectively host the solution themselves in their managed data center. So it's not really a solution from a third party, but by definition that technology might not be on their core business site. It could be in a data center in another location or indeed country. And hybrid cloud refers, as it might suggest, to a sort of a combination of the two. It could also refer to how you can have some premise-based equipment with some hosted-based technologies for possibly resilience or indeed migration purposes. Again, I'll elaborate a bit more on that as we go through the presentation. So I mentioned at the outset, in terms of our agenda, I wanted to just sort of set the scene a little bit in terms of changing trends and opinions in this space. This is an interesting piece of research done by Ovram recently, where they were citing the growth agent position take-up for call center seats, if you like, from 2011 through to 2016. And you can see the almost drop-off entirely of premise-based new agent positions by the time we get to 2016, with cloud-based positions rising to somewhere around about the 20% mark in terms of growth. So there is no doubt that we are on a march, if you like, in terms of how hosted technology is really driving the contact center space, particularly in all sectors, particularly outsourced. So we see probably the outsourced market as the most aggressive in terms of the take-up of hosted technology, and this piece of research certainly would support that. Looking at sort of more generic trends, then, you know, in certain markets, not all, we are in a kind of rapid growth state. We're seeing more and more clients wanting to adopt hosted technologies. They want to move away from what we often refer to as point solutions into suite solutions like ours, where they no longer need a telephone system plus a call center system plus a recording system plus a workforce management system and so on and so forth. They desire an application that can provide all that technology from a single suite, be it hosted or indeed even premise in certain scenarios. The hybrid deployment I mentioned earlier, I think, is interesting too, in as much that we see clients not necessarily wanting to jump, if you like, with both feet into fully hosted technologies. So they might want to deploy a hybrid model in the way I mentioned earlier, whereby they might, for example, in a simpler sense, keep the telco arrangements local to their business, so they will keep their own control of their ISDN or SIP circuits, for example, but the application is indeed hosted, so that would enable them to have greater resilience. There's less of a sort of step change in terms of moving all those numbers and indeed lines into a third-party data center. But that obviously enables them to make that change to a fully hosted model in the later stages if they wish to. Software developer fulfillment really makes reference to the fact that we see more clients wanting to take more control within their own IT resources, but at the same time not necessarily have the overhead and management of indeed those applications. And then globalization, again, a growing trend in businesses, again, as you'll hear from Dennis, within the outsource market, particularly in moving the business into more fragmented new markets, but at the same time, of course, wanting to keep one cohesive application to serve all those markets without putting separate solutions into each and every country, if that indeed is the case. So what are the primary drivers for hosted technology, particularly in the outsourced market? But I think this applies to really every business. So in no particular order, but we see these four probably the most common reasons why somebody would come to a company like ours to investigate how hosted can change their business. So flexibility. This is becoming increasingly important. The point solution model I mentioned earlier is historically inflexible in as much that it's difficult to potentially integrate those systems. They'll need regular upgrades and heavy maintenance contracts to indeed run them. So by definition are inflexible, which can restrict a business to grow, both in technology but also in size. And that dovetails quite nicely into the second point in terms of faster deployment time. So this is very key for the outsource marketplace, in that you're being driven by your client's agenda, not necessarily your own. So if a client does come along and needs extra functionality, or indeed extra bundle seats, as it were, tomorrow, then you need to be comfortable in knowing that you can react to that in the time to hopefully satisfy their requirements and differentiate yourself possibly from a competitor. And then, obviously, commercials can't ever be ignored. By definition of hosted technologies, there is minimal upfront capital expenditure, because we are taking away all that hardware and licensing expense from you. This is an operating model in every sense. So we are looking to provide a contract to cost the use of the system, but typically based on a per user per month framework, which makes it extremely easy to both cost and extrapolate those costs and cross-charge those costs where appropriate. And then if we can reduce IT requirements, then that will always please every business, not just the IT team, but the management teams as well. And of course, hosted technology takes much more IT away from the business and puts it indeed with the hosted provider to manage and indeed maintain. So the logic there being more strategic thinking than just tactical knee-jerk reaction changes as they are necessary. And then what are the sort of typical objections, I suppose, if you like, or in this slide cites critical requirements. So this was a poll done by IDG, where they asked several CIOs, what are the areas you're most concerned about in terms of considering hosted technologies. So security, reliability, and control, possibly to many of you unsurprisingly, were the three top areas of debate. If you can read the slide there, it even gives you the percentages of how they actually came to pass. So some might say the obvious things in terms of security. We want to ensure that our data is indeed secure and kept separate from anyone else's. It's sensitive information. Can that be kept local? Do I have to keep that in your data center? Can it still reside in my data locally? That's for financial services organizations often a critical and must-have requirement. Naturally, reliability is tantamount to everybody. We want to ensure that we can provide a service that still can live up to expectation in terms of service reliability and provide a 5.9 level grade of service. But for companies that have yet to move into the hosted model, then this is something which can come with some cynicism, I suppose, until they understand how the model works and that their reliability potentially is even higher than what they might have at the moment locally with the level of control that we have in our data centers. And then control itself. So again, there's a feeling that if an application is not on site, then do you have the same level of access and administration to it as you would do if it was all in your own control and locally installed? Well, that's something which obviously is very important and clearly is essential in providing a hosted service that is really seamless in terms of how it might look if it was indeed on site. And to cover those points off, we have to, as a hosted provider, conform to some very strict governance around security and compliance. I won't go into each of these now. I'll happily take questions at the end if you want to learn more. But suffice to say that both from our infrastructure in terms of our data centers in different parts of the world, the actual compliance in terms of, for example, PCI is a very hot topic at the moment for payment processing processes, and indeed the certification that we need to uphold in terms of providing certain levels of certification in different countries to indeed provide hosted technologies is essential. So these are really must-have checkboxes for you when considering a hosted provider. So you saw the technology timeline earlier on in the presentation. We call our hosted service Communication as a Service, CaaS for short. And by definition of that service, we can provide all of the technologies as listed on this slide. So that gives our outsourced customers incredible confidence in knowing that if a client comes along with a particular requirement for web collaboration, as an example, they might not have that particular feature enabled in their current campaigns or clients, but it's easily enabled through a subscription service they can turn on and indeed off based on that client's or that new client's requirement. So back to the flexibility angle, this is essential for very much our outsourced customers, but indeed all customers, in knowing that whilst they might not need all this technology today, the Customer Interaction Centre suite will indeed provide it at any point in their contract, and obviously we can enable these services almost at a flick of a switch on request. I think it will just bill for that service as is needed. Looking at just some of the architectural side of the hosted service, again, I won't go into these in too much detail, but I've mentioned already that our solution is a single solution and there's no longer a reliance on third-party products to provide the contact center infrastructure, such as separate phone systems or call recording devices. We can offer, and Dennis is going to talk a bit more about this a bit later on, hybrid models where you can host certain parts of the system but not all. That is appealing for many new entrants into the hosted market. And of course we can provide a multi-instance scenario to satisfy businesses with multi-country offices, or indeed companies within companies, if you like, in terms of using a single system for different cost centers around the business, be it in one location or indeed many. So how do we meet the needs of the outsourcer within this hosted solution? So again, Dennis in a moment is going to talk to you about his view on this, but ours is very much, these are the sort of four key advantages of how hosted technology can provide great benefit to the outsourced market. So flexibility I've already spoke about. Lower setup cost is critical. Margins are obviously everything in an outsourced environment, and if we can keep the setup cost down, then clearly we can maximize profits to the outsourcer based on their cross-charging back to that client. Lower IT overhead is again essential. Outsourcers typically have quite small IT teams, and if we can do more with less, and obviously put more reliance on the outsourced provider to carry out certain moves, adds and changes to administrative functions, that's obviously an advantage to the outsourcer to concentrate on more campaign-driven tasks on the floor, as it were. And then speed. You know, this is essential. We need to provide tools to enable an outsourcer to react quickly to both change based on client demand, as I mentioned earlier, but also in terms of flexibility, whether a client might come along and want to double the size of their headcount for a seasonal spike in traffic, for example. So our hosted solutions enable them to flex up to that need and flex back down without incurring any additional costs over and above the period they need it for, and thus can just cross-charge the extra overhead that we'll levy for that period and no more. Meeting the needs of management within the outsourced market, then again, these might be quite obvious, but I think it's worth just calling them out. So from a management point of view, clearly everybody's looking to look for new ways to increase revenue but lower the cost. And if we can create better customer service, then that's obviously essential. You know, we need to maintain the as-is. That's essential for many outsourcers to sort of keep those plates spinning and keep the margins as profitable as is possible, but clearly move the business forward. And then from a technology point of view, this is something which we believe we provide the best answer to in terms of giving technological advantage. So by definition, outsourcers compete fiercely with known competitors for the same business, and they're all trying to differentiate in any way possible. Ultimately, if we can provide technical advantage through flexibility of choice in terms of new technologies like speech analytics or mobile application integration or social media, then these are things that clearly can potentially be the difference between winning and losing a contract, and you're not sort of drawn purely on the cost of that contract versus a competitor. So in terms of looking at the deployments, then you have many choices to make. So carrier relationship is really referring to what you might want to do with your current lines in simple terms. So if you have a relationship with BT, does that relationship continue? Do you keep those lines in place with those non-geographic or DDI numbers? Or do indeed you then potentially route them into our data center for us to manage that for you and route those calls through our data center to you? These are choices that you can make. How do we handle your data? Depending on your business, be it financial services or other, then there are, again, choices to be made in terms of where you might indeed have that data stored. It can, of course, be in our secure data center, but it also can be on your site if you so choose. This is very interesting. Obviously, by definition of hosting the service, then we wrap it in a managed service, and that also includes the management and maintenance of that system. So in the past, for a premise-based system, you would have had to carry out periodic maintenance and upgrades on your own, or at the cost of the provider. Within a hosted service, that's all taken care of for you with minimal disruption. And then migration is a reference to some of our clients who have indeed started using our technology in the cloud have actually decided periodically through the contract that they want to bring it back in on-premise. That can be for any number of reasons, be it commercial or indeed technical. So we offer the opportunity to migrate both from cloud to premise and back to the other way around as well. And then if you have a large corporate PABX that serves other parts of the business outside the area that might benefit from outsourced contact center technology, then indeed that can still be retained if indeed it's necessary. So we're not in any way restricting choice. We're giving ultimate flexibility to enable you to go into the hosted model in any way you so choose initially. A couple of examples before we get into the Voxpro case study. So scalability, this is highlighted by a company called Intuit. They're a very large financial organization in the US. They have a product called TurboTax that in tax, I can't remember the exact date, I think it's in March for the Americans. Then everybody uses this product to do their tax return. So their requirement from an agent point of view can go from quite a small group to a huge amount of numbers, many thousands. So they use our hosted service to flex up massively over and above their standard sort of running operating model to cope with the demand in this peak tax assessment period, and then flex that back down again. So a really interesting example of how the flexibility can work. There's a potential objection that hosted means you're restricted in terms of integration. Well, we would certainly not support that. We have a very healthy long list of open and certified APIs into lots of mainstream CRM systems. Equally, the product itself, even when hosted, is able to be integrated into other third-party applications, be it CRM or ERP and the other, as appropriate. So don't think that just hosting a system means you're restricted in terms of what level of integration that communication platform can then have. And then ability to change as your business does. So, move responsibility to a certain extent to us and some control, but at the same time keep the level of control in keeping with your expectations in terms of how you can indeed migrate from one premise system to indeed a hosted service. So with that, I'll hand over to Dennis Cambridge, and he'll talk more about how Voxpro have gone through the process I've just talked about very briefly, and he'll share some insight into their experiences so far and why indeed they chose to invest in the cloud more than continue with a premise-based system. Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Neil, and good afternoon, everybody. I'll just try and give a brief overview of who Voxpro is and what our experiences are of the cloud so far, and how we've adopted cloud technologies to kind of move us forward and keep current with technology. So we'll tell you who actually we are. So at the moment, we're Ireland's leading and longest established provider of custom management BPO. And to stay there and to be that kind of company, we always need to embrace new technology, and we always need to be at the forefront of technology. So I think the relationship we have right now with Interactive Intelligence, as Neil just spoke about, is that they're an open architecture company, which means that we can bolt on systems and we can constantly upgrade and work with the systems to ensure that what our clients' needs are can be met by the systems that we install. So just a little bit more about us. We've got over 50 key clients at the moment. We work across 12 languages, and we're 365 24/7. which is a challenge in itself. So we're multilingual. Our specializations are in technical and product support services, and we run between a shared services and a dedicated engagement modules. And we're established since 1973, so we've been around a long time, and we're Irish owned and managed. That's just a list of some of our companies right there, so you can see that there's some big names there and some customers which we really need to be at the forefront of technology with. So that in itself is a challenge to kind of meet the expectations of these customers. So like we embrace cloud technology because a lot of the customers up there are embracing it as well, and we need to integrate and work with these companies to ensure we always can provide the services that they need us to provide. So I'll give you a little brief history with Interactive Intelligence. We've had a 10-year successful relationship with Interactive. We started out really with a small PBX back in 2002 of 12 seats. And we looked at Interactive's model and looked at their architecture and found that it was something that would suit us because we always needed to integrate our systems and always integrate our developers' tools and our sites with an open architecture which just wasn't available on the market anywhere else. So we just found it hard to integrate with other telephony systems and PBX. So starting a relationship with Interactive was a good choice for us. And again, we kind of easily shifted the technology from analog to digital and back up to IP. And again, we've embraced SIP over traditional infrastructure quite easily. And we've just seen instant cost savings with improved infrastructure. And at the moment, just on the cloud model, we're currently migrating probably 50% of our seats at present into the CAS system. And we're looking at developing our CAS models and our software as a service models into the cloud. So you might say, why cloud and why adopt cloud technologies? I mean, as Neil has already spoken about, there are some main points, and really these were the drivers for us to move to cloud. So the main points would be agility and mobility and the ability to actually move our technology to where our customers' needs were, and also quickly ramp up infrastructure, and scalability and capacity, security and resilience, which I'll talk about in a second, and also, which is kind of covers the whole business, is low cost and optimized infrastructure. And also, like a great point that you can actually get out of the cloud is it helps in your BCP and DR planning, and also cost and budget control, the very famous CapEx versus OpEx model. So there's just a little point there as well, and it says to succeed with cloud service, business and IT leaders must recognize and deal with the fact that the role of IT is changing to include much more comprehensive supply chain management. And that's something that we've actually seen here in the last 5 to 6 years, that the traditional IT department can kind of migrate from a maintenance or a kind of a server or data center role and into more of a vendor management and supplier management role, because their systems are now being provided by a third-party supplier. So there is a shift and change in the IT department, and there's a shift and change in roles and responsibilities to actually provide these services. So it's a point that can be looked at. What type of cloud and the factors for choosing a hosted contact center. This was a report done by Frost & Sullivan in 2011-2012, and it looked at CIOs and IT managers and what were their concerns, or what were their factors in looking at a hosted contact center. And two of the really big ones really were rapid time to deployment and flexibility and scalability and business agility, which are two of the main factors really that we looked at when we were looking to roll out the interactive cloud model. So there's other ones there as well, like managing technology is not our core competency, or no capital investment. They are really big drivers in choosing to go down the cloud model. So I'll just speak on a couple of those points. Agility would really be a main point for us. So it's the ability of a system to rapidly respond to change by adapting its initial stable configuration. So in cloud infrastructure terms, for us, it meant a minimal setup and capabilities delivered quickly. So we were able to quickly roll out and migrate from an on-premise system into the cloud model and quickly ramp up and down based on the business needs. So as you could probably see there from some of our client lists, some of those would have kind of quick projects and quick jobs that we need to react to fast. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to have redundant licensing based on an on-site model. So what we would do in the cloud model is that we can just quickly add those licensing, get those users up, provide a project for the client, and quickly ramp down again with just an OpEx charge, no CapEx involved. And again, we just a less cash outlay. Mobility for us in the last 2 years and for the coming years, we need to look at mobility in terms of where we need to be and where we need to provide our client services. So without cloud technologies, where you're really suited is you've got disparate systems and multiple systems, probably costing you the same amount of money to run in different geographic areas with the same licensing costs and the same maintenance costs, and that just increases CapEx, increases OpEx. So what we like to do and what we have done is that by moving our technologies into the cloud and into those data centers, is that we can have the same systems running off the same backbone and engine, and we consolidate our systems into a core managed infrastructure. So we greatly reduce costs by not having the same systems licensed over and over again. And we also, which is a really important point, is we standardize our approach to systems. So the same systems are available to multiple sites, which eases training and which kind of standardizes our systems and really brings a kind of a cultural change across the organization. There's a big question then on CapEx versus OpEx. So I know Neil touched on it earlier, but it is one of the main benefits of cloud technologies, where you don't have a capital spend as much as you would have looking at on-premise systems, and it translates into a much easier manageable OpEx spend. But there's just a few points that you can overlook on that as well, which you would see kind of savings on. It's the direct cost that a company running the server, so power, floor space, storage, and IT operations to manage those. That's another cost savings that's really sometimes missed. And the other indirect cost of running the servers and networks and infrastructure. And probably the last point is really the IT management and its support systems. There are direct costs and there are indirect costs that are actually saving now with moving to cloud technologies that help between the CapEx versus OpEx model. So what services have VoxPro pushed to the cloud? The key services that we're now looking at in the cloud are obviously our contact center telephony systems, our CAS systems, but also we're looking at our scripting services as software as a service. So we use CallScript now completely web-based and out in the cloud, which means that no matter what location the agent can actually sit at, they have their full scripting tools available and they have their contact center systems available under the VoIP model and under the SIP model. And also we have web servers, domain controllers and databases in private clouds out there. So as Neil talked about, I mean, it's not just one cloud model. You can use various cloud models and push the services out to those models to suit the business need. But our aim in the next couple of years is to have our systems completely in the cloud. So it doesn't really matter where an agent sits. They could be sitting at home, they could be sitting in the office or sitting on another geographic location and still have the same applications and same services available to them. And again, the types of cloud available, you've got your traditional public cloud hosting, and you've got your private cloud and your hosted hybrid. So I'll talk in a minute about which one we actually use, but again, the cloud is actually open and there is an open architecture available with Interactive, which allows you to, choose the model which is better for you and the model which suits you, and also which cost model actually just benefits your business most. So there is 2 deployment methods inside that, which we actually looked at and used. So you have a local control system on VoIP and you have a remote control system. So depending on what you're comfortable with and depending on what your cost model is, you can actually just deliver calls directly into the cloud system and into the Interactive data center and get those calls delivered over an MPLS network or the internet right into the data center. Or you can choose to deliver the calls to your own contact center with all the logic and routing technology back into the data center. I mean, what we do is that we look at the local control VoIP where we deliver the actual voice call to our systems here, and what we do is we send the data path off to Interactive, who controls the logic and routing. That gives us more control of the actual voice call, but still with that we can actually still send a recording portion of that and storage back to the data center, which is a lot more secure. And again, just the considerations between them. With local control, you can keep your communications and you can keep the voice on your network and keep recordings either on your own storage or storage in the data center. And you can also look at your database and have your database locally controlled, but just have all the logic and the actual system logic and the system routing back into the data center. With remote control, it's just a slightly bit different. if you don't want a manager, if you find that managing all your lines is a bit of an overhead, you can actually push that down into the cloud, and it doesn't become an investment with you anymore. You can actually just push that responsibility off to the data center, and they will actually deliver your calls then through a secure MPLS network or over the internet. And what other additional services are available from CAS? Like multiple different systems that you could have an on-premise system, such as workforce management, self-service, dialer, survey feedback, all of those disparate systems which could have been sitting on your infrastructure and sitting as different servers, taking up room in your data centers or have to be managed. All of that now is available as one service inside the cloud network. So really it's a one-stop suite for all. So what you can do is you can just actually connect up an agent and have all their tools available from scripting right through to workforce management. And what we've done, the main drivers for change for us in terms of the VoxPro contact center was the financials. So we needed to reduce or eliminate capital expenditure, which is a big thing. We need to reduce the educational support costs, and we need to have predictable ongoing costs, and then the potential savings per head is really seen. Also, I mean, a big thing in IT now is virtualization. So we saw virtualization as key to actually just, cut out on our data center spend, by getting rid of the overhead of having machines on site and just go down a virtualization model where we could quickly scale up and bring systems online when needed. And again, an end to the rip and replace cycle, the communications infrastructure. We've gone through two major changes in the last 10 years in terms of technology, and as everybody knows, it's probably just getting a little bit faster now. So again, we have SIP technologies in place now. How long will it be before we'd have to rip out that technology on premise again and replace it? The beauty of having it in the cloud and having it in the data center is that those technologies are upgraded as you pay. So whatever benefits are available or whatever upgrades will actually happen while you're running through the service agreement. So like that rip and replace methodology is really gone from me now. Also disaster recovery and business continuity, handing that responsibility over to the service provider, so they are actually taking care of the disaster recovery element, and you have multiple systems there and multiple lines of redundancy and resilience. It's a cost saving for you, but also a good item that you can actually cover with this technology. And again, simplify the IT infrastructure, a reduced footprint and streamlined support really is what helped us and made it for us. VoxPro's contact center in the cloud, has it worked or is it working? We've definitely seen a reduced CapEx integration projects with clients. We're more competitive in the market due to reduced costs and overheads. So that was a good thing for us. It is a very competitive market in Ireland, so we are always at the forefront to understand what our costs are and to try and make reductions so we can pass those costs back onto our clients. We have seen increased service level and operation level agreements and a better return on risk reward agreements because we have more secure systems and more resilient systems now, because they are sitting inside in data centers which are kind of SAS compliant and no PCI DS compliant, so it really helps us in terms of our SLA and OLA agreements. And again, the IT maintenance and support costs have reduced, and that leaves more time for my staff to concentrate on their core functions. And also we have faster migration paths to CAS. We actually have both systems here right now. We've got an on-premise system and a cloud system, and we're migrating our 50% of our business now into the cloud system. And the migration paths and the training between both systems is a lot reduced. So we can actually migrate people back into our on-premise systems and take them off and move them into CAS when the need arises, for depending on the contract and depending on the client needs. And as I just spoke about earlier, we also have a shift of task and responsibility from internal maintenance to external vendor management. So the IT department is kind of changing in itself, where normally that you would have responsibilities in the data center, responsibilities or day-to-day maintenance tasks. Now that is changing to kind of vendor management and a more business-focused IT staff. Okay, so that's my slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. John, that's our piece finished.
That's fun. Thank you very much, Neil. Sorry about that, just lost you for a moment. Extremely insightful, both Neil and Dennis's presentations. Thank you very much both for taking the time to be with us. And we do have some questions, and I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you can stay around for the next 10 minutes or so, and we'll be answering some of the questions that have come through to us here. So first of all, I think we'll kick off with one for you, Dennis, because this sort of cuts through to sort of how the clients see outsourcers who use cloud-based systems. And do you get resistance from clients or from prospective clients around, sort of the headline issues around security and stability that you often see in the media with regard to hosted technologies? Or do the customers not care? Do they just simply want the service delivered, and as long as you can deliver it, they don't really mind exactly how you deliver it? What's the reaction from the clients and the prospects?
Well, it is a balance between both. It completely depends on the customer. So, a lot of our small customers really don't care how we deliver the calls or how we deliver the data to them. But for some of our bigger clients, I wouldn't say a concern, but there is a level of assurance that you need to give, and we can give that assurance by saying that. The very important point is that the data center that the cloud infrastructure sits on, it has to be SAS 70 compliant. It has to be looking down the PCI DSS route if you're talking about financial transactions. But I think when you go and see these data centers, which we've done, and you investigate these data centers, you see that there's in quite a lot of instances there's no way that you could actually employ the same security and have the same maintenance tasks, have the same resilience and support in your own business as what could be in the actual data center that the systems are sitting on. So, I mean, when clients see the spec of the data center, and when they see how secure the data center is, it kind of relays any concerns on security. Is that okay?
Yeah, and these are mature technologies, aren't they? This isn't new stuff that came out yesterday. This is tried and tested, and it's has been around for a while.
Absolutely.
I suppose the question leading on from that is you mentioned, Dennis, some of the business case issues around all the advantages of hosted versus the on-premise alternative. If you're bidding against competitors in the outsourced market, do you see yourselves now having an advantage because you are a cloud or going towards being a cloud
absolutely, because we see an immediate reduction in the cost per seat or cost per head in our organisation, and also we can manage that cost based on projects. So, I mean, when we bring customers online and they do see a reduced cost because we don't have any capex to bring on new sites and to bring on, like, say, 100, 150 agents. All we're really doing is expanding the agreement that we have with the provider. So in other instances where you'd probably have to buy perpetual or licensing based on a per head and work that into the contract and buy certain hardware to support the project, now all we're really doing is just ramping up in terms of licensing to provide a project. So immediately you can see the cost benefits and we can be very, very competitive over others right now who would have those costs and who would have to build those costs in.
Neil, the sort of the flip side of that, from a provider perspective, are you now seeing outsourcing organisations talking about the need to have cloud to remain competitive in what is, as you pointed out, a very, very competitive marketplace?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I mentioned, the outsource space is probably the most aggressive in terms of their need both to take up technology more quickly than other business sectors, but also to remain competitive. So by definition, it is self-generating, I suppose you could say, in that in a market like here in Southern Ireland, which is relatively small, then it's a case of, well, it is keeping up with the Joneses, I suppose, for a better phrase. You will be at a disadvantage if you can't compete with that kind of cost model using an OPEX model versus a CAPEX model. So definitely.
And I assume, Neil, like all organisations, you're always on the hunt for thicker margins or offerings that can that can deliver thicker margins. Do you see that the additional elements that can be delivered by, let's say, a broad contact center suite delivered over the cloud will allow you to offer more things to the clients, in particular things like analytics and that sort of that customer insight piece that can add value to the sort of the customer conversation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've always been able to offer, we think, new technology easier than our competitors because our product is all a single solution. However, the cloud takes it to a new level in the sense that in Voxpro's case, the client comes along and says, yeah, we want to incorporate some high-level speech analytics into this campaign, whereas before Dennis would have to come to me, we'd work out a price to buy some licenses, a price to buy maybe some professional services to design and implement it, and then the lead time to do all of that. Now it's a case of, well, Dennis would talk to our CAS service center with that request, and it's enabled and it's available. So it can be done very quickly, but more specifically, there's no big cost. It's a case of, well, that's going to cost Voxpro X more pounds per user per month, which they cross-charge straight to that client who are requesting it, and that might only be for a short-term campaign. And we'll take that revenue for a month, or we'll take it for the contract term. But either way, we suit our customer, Voxpro, and they've certainly satisfied their clients' requirement.
And Dennis, do you see that the ability to offer outsourcing across different interaction channels, and also to potentially layer in some higher margin services, things like analytics, etc. Do you see that as that flexibility as being a sort of a plus for the future?
Absolutely. I think everybody is trying to look at a one-stop suite and trying to get to somewhere where it is available. It's all on the same architecture. It's all talking to each other. Like I know the buzzword big data, but it really is, having each of the disparate systems that are available right now in one database, in one system. And I suppose like the beauty of the cloud as well, which kind of people overlook, but and what we have actually found is that you might have a lot of on-premise systems out there, and each one is doing their own thing. And like, well, we might make an improvement or a development. Other contact centers wouldn't see that benefit, or other contact centers wouldn't be able to look at that benefit and say, how could that improve my business? I suppose with the cloud and with the public model, what you'll see is that, as I request a change or I request a benefit to happen, everybody will see that benefit. And, it's good for us and it's good for other contact centers. But, like you don't have that disparate system anymore. And you'll see the benefits from everybody else and everybody else's technology in a few years, which can only be a good thing.
And do you think... Do you think the technology will start to change the offering of the outsourcer? It won't be just that commodity call answering. It will start to climb up the value chain in terms of sort of other professional services that you can offer your clients.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the big one right now is analytics and business analytics, and actually instead of just taking the call and having that as a record on the database, it's more about what that data is doing and looking at those 1,000 records and finding out and giving that data back to customers and saying, okay, this is the way your business is changing. We can see that and we can report on that view. So we can see that from our customers right now. They are looking for a lot more from their data. So instead of us just taking the call or taking the email or looking at that, they like to see reactive processes. And if we can see trends in their business through the data that we're capturing, that's what they'd like to see.
No, that's fascinating. Brilliant. Well, it's all being facilitated by some new technologies which are changing the business model of the outsourcing provider. Thank you very much, both to Neil Titcombe from Interactive Intelligence and to Dennis Cambridge from Voxpro. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for spending time with us today. Always grateful for your company at these webinars. Thank you very much to Interactive Intelligence for their support of this webinar series. They've been very supportive of the Directors Club activities over the last couple of years, and will continue to to provide that support for this year, so thank you very much to them. So we come to the end of our hour. It's 2 o'clock in the UK, and it's the end of this particular webinar, but please join us again for future webinars. You can go to the Directors Club website at dcgbni.co.uk, or go to or follow us at DCGBNI on Twitter to hear about all of the up-and-coming events that we have planned. So thank you very much once again to both Neil and Dennis, and to you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope to have your company sometime very soon. Take care.